Before I start with an update, I also want to address the tragic loss of our KC-135 refueling aircraft yesterday. The incident occurred over friendly territory in western Iraq while the crew was on a combat.
The radio call was brief, calm, professional. Then it went silent. Somewhere over the deserts of western Iraq, one of the most important aircraft in the entire American war machine disappeared from the sky. Not a fighter jet, not a drone, a tanker. A massive Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker, the flying fuel station that keeps modern air power alive in combat. Within minutes, radar screens began lighting up with alerts. Controllers realized something had gone terribly wrong. One aircraft was missing. Another had declared an emergency. And suddenly, a question began circulating through military command centers across the Middle East. What exactly happened in the sky over Iraq? Because losing a tanker in the middle of an active conflict is not just a tragedy. It can change the entire rhythm of air operations. Anyone familiar with modern air warfare knows this. When the tankers stop flying, the fighters cannot stay in the fight. And that is where this story begins. Initial reports confirmed that a U.S. tanker aircraft had crashed in western Iraq. The aircraft belonged to the fleet of KC-135 Stratotankers that form the backbone of American aerial refueling operations across the region. According to officials from United States Central Command, 4 crew members were killed in the crash, while rescue operations continued for 2 others in the remote desert terrain. But the most intriguing detail came shortly afterward. A second KC-135 had declared an emergency. Flight tracking data suggested that this second tanker diverted and eventually landed safely after reporting damage. Photographs later surfaced showing what appeared to be structural damage to the aircraft's vertical stabilizer, the tall tail structure that keeps an aircraft stable in flight. This detail led investigators to consider a disturbing possibility: a mid-air collision. 2 tanker aircraft operating in the same area of airspace may have made contact during flight. If true, it would explain both the sudden crash and the emergency landing of the second aircraft. But how could something like that happen? To understand the risks involved, it helps to understand what these aircraft actually do. The KC-135 is essentially a flying gas station. Its mission is simple but incredibly delicate: refuel other aircraft while both are moving through the sky at hundreds of miles per hour. During aerial refueling, fighter aircraft such as the McDonnell Douglas F-15E Strike Eagle approach the tanker from behind, stabilizing themselves just a few meters away. A long refueling boom extends from the tanker's tail. A trained boom operator carefully guides the nozzle into the receiving aircraft's fuel port. At that moment, the 2 aircraft are flying only about 40 feet apart. One sudden movement, one unexpected turbulence shift, one moment of miscommunication, and the situation can become extremely dangerous. This is why aerial refueling is often described as one of the most precise maneuvers in military aviation. Now, imagine multiple tanker aircraft operating in a busy wartime air corridor, surrounded by fighter jets, surveillance aircraft, and drones. The margin for error becomes very small. Of course, another theory quickly began circulating online. Some observers speculated that the aircraft might have been shot down by a missile launched by militia forces operating in Iraq. The region has seen increased activity from Iranian-backed groups in recent weeks. Several American installations in Iraq and Syria have already come under rocket and drone attacks. But military officials were quick to address the speculation. CENTCOM stated clearly that the crash was not caused by hostile fire and not the result of friendly fire either. That leaves mechanical failure or collision as the most likely explanations. And for now, investigators are focusing heavily on the possibility that two tankers simply came too close together in crowded wartime airspace. Western Iraq, where the crash occurred, is vast desert territory. It is sparsely populated and difficult to search quickly. Recovery teams are now working in harsh conditions to locate wreckage and gather flight data that might reveal the final moments before impact. Radar records, cockpit communication logs, structural damage patterns, each clue matters. Because understanding what happened is not only about explaining one accident, it is about protecting the entire system that supports American air operations in the region. And that system depends heavily on tanker aircraft. Without aerial refueling, fighter jets lose range. Bombers lose endurance. Surveillance aircraft cannot remain on station for extended periods. In short, the reach of modern air power shrinks dramatically. That is why tanker fleets are considered strategic assets, and why losing even one aircraft can raise serious questions inside military planning rooms. When people think about military air power, they usually imagine fighter jets, fast, aggressive, armed with missiles. But behind every fighter jet in the sky, there is usually a tanker, quietly circling hundreds of miles away, waiting, fueling, keeping the operation alive. The crash of a KC-135 tanker is not just a tragic accident. It is a reminder of how complex and fragile modern military operations can be. Thousands of aircraft movements, dozens of simultaneous missions, radar screens filled with signals. And in the middle of that controlled chaos, crews must perform incredibly precise maneuvers at high speed. Anyone watching this scenario usually pauses to consider the stakes, because accidents in wartime airspace can happen faster than anyone expects. Right now, investigators are still piecing together the final sequence of events that led to the tanker crash over Iraq. Was it mechanical failure? Was it human error? Or was it simply the dangerous reality of operating complex aircraft in crowded skies during a time of conflict? Until the full investigation is complete, those answers remain uncertain. But one thing is already clear. In modern warfare, even the aircraft that carry no weapons can become some of the most critical pieces of the entire battlefield. And when one of them falls from the sky, the ripple effects can travel far beyond the crash site. The desert may be quiet tonight, but somewhere inside command centers across the region, analysts are already studying the data, asking the same question again and again. What happened in the sky over Iraq? And more importantly, how do they make sure it never happens again?